UVA and Virginia Tech's basketball teams are rolling even as more and more ACC games are postponed. And we're going to be joined by former UVA linebacker Charles Snowden. He'll discuss his college career, his decision to turn pro, playing football during a pandemic, and his role in his team's efforts for social justice. All that and more this week on Teel and Barber. Welcome in to episode 37 of Teel and Barber, the Richmond Times-Dispatch and Richmond.com's Virginia Tech, UVA, and ACC sports podcast. I'm Mike Barber, ACC beat writer for the paper, and here joining me, as he always does, my co-host, the 13-time Sports Writer of the Year and the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer, David Teel. David, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. Good afternoon. A little disappointed by the recent postponement news, though.
Yes, as has been the case throughout the year and at times during football as well. We've lost both of the games that we were planning to cover Wednesday. Virginia and North Carolina State was scrubbed because of continuing COVID issues in the Wolfpack program. That decision was made over the weekend. And then today, as we record this podcast on Tuesday, we found out that Virginia Tech and Boston College was off. And, you know, that one was a positive test at Boston College, which has been one of the most successful athletic departments in terms of avoiding positive tests. And their coach, Jim Christian, told us yesterday, hey, maybe a little lucky. He said, knock on wood, we've been able to avoid the positive tests. Well, Jim, you might have jinxed it because, or you didn't knock on wood when you said it, because now that game has gone the way of so many that we've seen already, and just reminds us of what a challenge it's going to be to get through this year. Yeah,
we're not going to clearly get to 20 conference games probably for anyone. And, you know, Virginia now has 3 ACC games, Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, and NC State that have been postponed. And this is Virginia Tech's second postponement, if I'm recalling correctly, with UVA and Boston College.
And time is starting to become of the essence, right? Because it'll be interesting to see, because, you know, right now what we understand is they're committed to the idea of a conference tournament. But I was talking to somebody in a mid-major league who said, you know, you may end up getting to a point where teams scrap the conference tournament idea and say, hey, let's use that week to get in a couple more games, to maybe have teams play 3 more conference games, because the NCAA lowered the threshold to make the NCAA tournament to 13. And when they did it, I thought, well, that's good. That'll be an easy to hit number. David, that might not be as easy to hit as I thought.
It may not. And now there is a waiver process if you don't happen to make that 13-game threshold. But I agree with you, Mike. I'm not sold yet on conference tournaments, especially with the NCAA requiring 7 consecutive negative COVID tests before a team is even allowed to travel to Indianapolis for the centralized NCAA tournament. So I'm not sure we're out of the woods yet with league tournaments.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little more. David, I know we're both really excited about today's show. We've said a few times on this podcast, especially during football season, that Virginia linebacker Charles Snowden, he's the kind of player, the kind of guy we could devote an entire episode to. His off-the-field interests, his passions, he's so well-spoken, he's so thoughtful, his play on the field, his story of becoming an NFL prospect was a great one. Today, we're going to get the chance to do that. A little later in the show, Charles is going to join us, and I know I speak for both of us when I say we're really looking forward to that.
Absolutely. I feel smarter every time I talk to that young man, just because of the perspective he brings to the conversation. And just to have followed his evolution as an athlete, as a spokesman, as an activist, over these 4 years at UVA has really been a privilege.
Well said. And I know a lot of you are looking forward to hearing that. Before we get to Charles, we are going to hit the 2 basketball programs, Commonwealth ACC programs here. And let's start with Virginia Tech. And Mike Young's team, they've won 3 in a row. They're in second place in the ACC. They won a game at Wake Forest despite getting 1 basket combined from Keve Aluma and Jalen Cone, who have been 2 of their best players this season. David, how did they do it? And what does that tell you about the sustainability of what Mike Young has right now?
Well, I'll take your latter question first, Mike. I think it says a lot about the Hokies and any team, really, when you can win on the road. And I know that the Deacons are over in the ACC and probably will end up being the last place team. But when you bring your B or even arguably C game to a league contest and yet still win, I think that says a lot. And Virginia Tech did it with defense, and they did it with some clutch performances from some other folks, specifically Tyrese Radford and revelation, hello, David Gasson, right? I mean, who saw that coming? 13 points off the bench. What was it, 5 for 5 shooting? Yes, I think this group is built for the long haul, much more than last year's that had, the very optimistic win in Maui over, why am I blanking?
Michigan State.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about that on this show, that win over Michigan State was great, right? Yeah. Kind of announced Mike Young's, but it felt like they had done a great job on that day to pull an upset. Then they came out this year and beat Villanova. Now they've got the win over Duke. Those felt more like, hey, this team is good enough. He's built something. And it's interesting, Steve Forbes, the Wake Forest coach, obviously knows Mike Young from Mike's time coaching at Wofford. And he talked about seeing all of the earmarks of a Mike Young program, of a Mike Young culture, in the way they defended, in the way they played team basketball at Virginia Tech. And it was interesting to hear Steve basically say, hey, it's only year 2, but Mike Young's really already put his stamp on how Virginia Tech plays basketball.
Yeah, and then Mike Young, in turn, was asked about Steve Forbes's remarks, and he then, in turn, said he gets texts from Frank Beamer and Bud Foster all the time, and how he's kind of thought about that defensive mentality and that toughness and grit that kind of is all about Virginia Tech athletics. And that's what he wants his program to look like. And he believes he has it this season.
Yeah, and another thing he said that the fans were just swooning over. He was asked about being up near the top of the ACC standings, about being in the top 25, being ranked, all of those things. And his answer was sort of telling. It was confident. It was almost dismissive of the question in a polite way. And he said, that's where we're supposed to be. We're Virginia Tech. Maybe more bravado than you would expect from Mike Young, maybe more bravado than you would expect from Tech basketball at a school that's been known for football. But David, the fans really, really loved that reaction.
Oh yeah. Your tweet got thousands of likes, and I don't blame Hokie faithful for applauding that kind of moxie. You want to set the bar high, you want expectations, and then it's up to you to go chase them.
Yeah, and that's the thing that to me is exciting if you're a Tech fan. Mike Young says all the right things, and he's great. He's been great to us. But man, you look on the court, he seems to be doing all the right things. And, you mentioned Tyrese Radford, and a year ago, Tyrese kind of playing out of position. And this year, he's a little more free to be used in some better matchups. To me, this year, Tyrese Radford and Mike Young, the way he deploys him, they're dictating matchups as opposed to using Tyrese to react to matchups. And I think that's a huge difference for this program.
It is, Mike. When he goes downhill on offense, and then when he gets on the glass, again, going back to yesterday's ACC Zoom call, where Coach Young said there are some rebounds that Radford gets where they're just on the bench going, how'd he do that? He's 6'2", and yet he comes up with these loose, these 50-50 balls or rebounds. And those possessions that he creates or saves or extends, they're invaluable, especially when you've got shooters such as the other day, notwithstanding, Jalen Cone.
Yeah, they are built as a team that when their 3 game is on, they're really hard to beat, but they have some ways to win when the shots aren't falling. And maybe the best thing about Radford, he went 6 for 6, David, at the free throw line in the final 45 seconds of that game. he has that. And we struggle as sports writers to quantify it for generations. People have been looking for the word, but that clutch gene or that it factor, whatever it is, he may not score 20 points a game, but he'll score 20 points on the night you need him. And he may not hit all his free throws, but he'll hit all his free throws in the last minute when you need it. And his teammates have recognized that this is a guy who is going to find a way to win. And I think that permeates this team.
Yeah, code player of the week in the league, along with Justin Champagny at Pittsburgh, who obviously deserved it as well after his return from a knee injury, getting 24 and 16 the other day against Syracuse. But you mentioned free throws, Mike. I mean, that's a huge difference in this club. I think last year they averaged 13, 15 free throws a game. This year they're up over 20. They had 23 the other night. They're second only to North Carolina in the ACC in free throws attempted. And Carolina's always going to be atop of that because they're always so big and going to get fouled and get to the line. But this season, thanks to the guys such as Keve Aluma and Justin Mutz, the two transfers, they're getting to the line.
Absolutely. And this team is bigger. It is stronger. No, it's not North Carolina, but they've made huge strides in that regard. And David, that's why I think when I look at this, it looks like a team that's built to hold up. Now, remember, Mike's team got off to a real good start last year, kind of faded down the stretch. Mm-hmm. Wasn't very deep, wasn't very big, kind of got beat up in ACC play. This team and the success it's having, it does look sustainable. It does look like this can carry on.
Yes. Completely agree. I think they can be in the chase for the top 3-4 in the league all the way till the end, along with Virginia and perhaps Louisville. Florida State seems to me to be the class of the league. You'd throw Clemson in there, and who knows what we're going to get with Duke and Carolina, and heck, maybe even Pitt, which is sitting there at 3-1.
It's kind of amazing when you think about the ACC and how long you go in the conversation before you get to Duke, Carolina, Louisville. You don't get to Syracuse right now. I mean, and I don't know, people are going to have mixed opinions on that, but people are going to say, oh, it's a down year in the ACC because it isn't Duke and Carolina. But the teams you just mentioned, David, I think they're great teams, and I think they're built for postseason success with the way almost every one of those teams you named plays defense. Yes.
I mean, Clemson, which led the nation in defensive efficiency before UVA, we'll get to that in a minute. But you look at the standings, Mike. Virginia's sitting there at 5-0, and there's 5 other teams with one loss in the league. And another team we haven't mentioned now. Granted, Georgia Tech's only played 3 league games. Mm-hmm. But the Jackets are 2-1, and then Duke, Pitt, Florida State, and the Hokies.
Well, God willing, we're going to get to see Georgia Tech this weekend. We were both going to see Boston College and Virginia Tech tomorrow after UVA's game had been canceled. Interesting nugget here, David, and we've written and tweeted about it a little bit. And UVA now off on Wednesday night, Tech now off on Wednesday night. To guys like me and you, it just seems like, hey, okay, let's put them together on the floor, but that's not happening. What do you think? Should they just kind of man up and play that game right now?
I would have. I mean, what's the buzzword of a pandemic sports season? Nimble. Have to be nimble. Be flexible. What did Mike Bray tell us on the ACC Zoom week before last? Scouting reports are overrated anyway. Hey, I know it would have been short notice, but when that Boston College Virginia Tech game got postponed this afternoon, or I guess it was maybe even this morning, I'd have been on the phone and I'd have made that UVA Virginia Tech game happen, because the first time has already been postponed. They were supposed to play on January 2nd. UVA couldn't pull it off. So now let's play. Short preparation time aside, it's a 2-hour bus ride. It's going to be difficult to get that January 2nd game rescheduled. Yes, I know it would create a Wednesday, Saturday, Monday grind for the Cavaliers, but that's what they were going to have anyway before the NC State game was postponed. I would be stunned if you polled the players from each program and said, you want to go? You want to run tomorrow night? If it's not 90% yes, I'm shocked.
No, I think it's 100%. You know what it reminds me of, and bear with me on the analogy here, but we travel a lot by plane, and we see weather, or we see delays, or we see problems, and it always shocked me that the airline's attitude wasn't, let's get as many people onto our plane and out as we can. Like, they'll charge you if you want to change your flight when there's bad weather coming. And I've never understood that, because you want to move people from point A to point B. You want to get their money. You want to move them. To me, the first opportunity you get, let's do it. And that's how I view scheduling in the pandemic. Is it ideal to ask you to play your rival and tell you 24 hours beforehand that that's what's going to happen? No, it's not great. Nothing's great right now. Nothing's ideal right now. So just, is this a way to get a game in? If the answer to that question is yes, I don't care about anything in the cons column. You've got a chance to play one. Let's knock it off the list. I look at it as a big checklist, and you're trying to get as much off the list as possible. And the sooner you take a game off that checklist, well, that's one less thing you got to worry about in February or early March. So I get it from a fairness, X's and O's, preparation. It's a big rivalry game, but we're in a pandemic. You guys are only 2 hours apart by bus. Lace them up and get it done.
Yes, and another thing, you don't have to worry about the TV crews, because they're working it remotely anyway. Maybe it was untenable, because I presume this game would have been at JPJ, because that's where the first game was scheduled to be, and the January 30 game is supposed to be in Blacksburg between the two. Was there a problem in getting staff rescheduled for Wednesday in Charlottesville? I don't know the logistics. I don't understand how that works. I'm not an athletics administrator. But from a purely basketball standpoint, yes, lace them up. Heck, if we need to go to some high school gym, let's play.
That would have been fun. That would have been fun, because UVA, Virginia Tech, they're both playing well. UVA, we went over Tech. UVA's winners of 5 in a row. They're alone atop the ACC standings. They're the only team in the ACC right now without a conference loss. And you mentioned what they did to Clemson. And yes, Clemson was coming off a break. They had a COVID pause, and that's not easy. But I asked Brad Brownell about it on the call, and he basically said, no, don't put it on the break. Put it on UVA playing great and us not playing very well. Josh Pastner from Georgia Tech said, watching that film, that UVA could have beaten Gonzaga, number 1 Gonzaga, the way they played against Clemson. Now, David, that may be a stretch, but maybe just a bit. But Virginia looked good.
Yeah, absolutely. And we mentioned in discussing the Hokies how different guys at different times, specifically David Gasson coming off the bench. Well, Thomas Woldense had done very little of late, and in fact did not even play against Notre Dame the game previous. And what did he get at Clemson? Was it 14?
Yeah.
Yeah, and hit a bunch of threes, and was part of that epic first half where Virginia just went away and hid from the Tigers, and there was no drama at all in the second half. I mean, you think about it, it's the first time Virginia scored 80 plus in back-to-back league games since the Lato era in 2007. That was a good squad. That's Sean Singletary and J.R. Reynolds. I mean, those cats could fill it up. And also the largest margin of victory ever for UVA against a top 25 opponent.
It really was a signature kind of performance, especially as you mentioned, because of Clemson's defensive renown. That's a great Clemson defensive team. And again, you do want to pause a little bit, because they were coming off the break, and Brad Brownell, the head coach himself, was out of practice for 2 of the 3 days as they got ready for this game. So I would say this, I was more impressed with Virginia than I was down on Clemson. I thought Virginia played great. I think Clemson's still going to be fine, and it's just a thing you're going through in this crazy year. But the good sign for Virginia, David, if you remember a year ago, we weren't quite sure where Tony Bennett's bunch was pointed. They weren't getting perimeter scoring. The offense had these long lags without points. And then Thomas Wodetense kind of got going from three, and it seemed to get the whole offense just in a new gear. Obviously, they ended the regular season winning 8 in a row, the hottest team in the league going into the ultimately cut short ACC tournament. That's kind of the feel I got in this Clemson game, watching not just Wodetense, but Trey Murphy III and Sam Hauser. UVA hit 15 threes in this game, and they don't need to do that every time. But if Hauser, Wodetense, Murphy, if those guys are providing that outside punch, this becomes a much more dangerous UVA team.
Don't forget about Jay Huff.
Yes, and that is what is the matchup part that makes it so fascinating. Huff and Hauser as your 5 and 4, those are like your European stretch guys, and now you're really messing up a defense when their 5-man needs to go out and cover Jay Huff on the wing, and you've got Hauser who can score from 3. He can score those little short jumpers, those pull-ups that he gets. He can drive, he can rebound, he can score on the low block. So they've got some pieces there, and again, especially when you do have to stay home on shooters, it becomes a really tough offense to match up with.
Sure does. And it's 5 guys out. You don't have to post up anybody. And that is, when you can spread the floor like that, it is a serious load to defend. And Clemson had been defending, as we mentioned, as well as anyone in the country. And they just got torched the other night by a team that's A, talented, and B, was playing at darn near its best.
Yeah, and it also just kind of brings out Kihei Clark's strengths, I think, when you have that around him, because he's been so good getting into the lane, penetrating. He's been good finishing this year, right? I mean, we've seen him even score some on the low block, and certainly part of that is his skill and his talent, but part of it is what you're saying, that they're having to spread out the floor, and that creates a lot of room for a guy like Kihei Clark to operate.
And you know who's helping Kihei Clark, Mike? Reese Beekman.
Mm-hmm.
I like his game. And for a freshman to come in and earn as much time as he has, he's very good with the ball. Defensively, he fits. He's so long, and he's really engaged on that end of the floor. That young man is going to be a player in future seasons at UVA.
Yeah, Tony Bennett was asked about the idea of, hey, you're playing Clark and Beekman. You've got 2 point guards on the court together. And what did Tony say? He said, hey, it worked out pretty well when he had Brogdon and Parentis together. It worked out pretty well when he had Jerome and Clark together. So, yeah, you got guys on the floor who can handle the basketball, who can make good decisions, who can play defense. You mentioned Beekman's defense, and that's been huge. Yeah, I know that they're point guards, but you can have 2 of them on the floor, and it can work pretty well.
And that's something they're going to need moving forward, Mike, against the Roy Williams is back to playing that Carolina trap in the half court, and Florida State will swarm you defensively, as we talked about earlier. Virginia Tech is very tough defensively. As Virginia hits the teeth of the conference schedule, if that NC State game ever gets rescheduled, and I believe the Cavaliers also are supposed to go to Raleigh, if memory serves. I don't have the schedule right in front of me. You know that the Wolfpack wants to pressure you full court and trap you in the backcourt. That Beekman-Clark combination is going to serve UVA well.
Yeah, and it's great for the future too. When you just think about the combinations that Tony mentioned, like what did London Parentis get out of being on the floor with Malcolm Brogdon? What did Kihei Clark get out of being on the floor with Ty Jerome? It's such a great line of kind of ascension there and tutelage to put those guys together. I love it. I think it's really smart.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree with you more.
Now that brings us to this week's Who You Got.
Thank you, Mike. You guys have mentioned a lot of great names. Both Virginia Tech and UVA have gotten some all-ACC caliber efforts from their best players so far this year. So who's been the best player in the Commonwealth? Who you got? Let's start with David.
Guys, there's no wrong answer here, by the way. You could go 3-4 different ways. Since I'm a numbers guy, perhaps to a fault, and I really like to look at Ken Palm's analytics. He's got Jay Huff as the number 10 player in the country right now, based on offensive and defensive efficiency and the numbers he's putting up. I know it's strange to pick a guy who's only averaging, I believe, 23 minutes a game, but the numbers he's producing during those minutes and the matchup issues he presents, I'm going to say Jay Huff.
Mike?
Yeah, that's a great answer. I was weighing Huff and Hauser at UVA. I was weighing Radford over at Virginia Tech. But at the end, I'm going to go with Keve Aluma. And part of it maybe is the impact, right? And the impact that we didn't expect. But this is a guy who's averaging just under 15 points a game. I think it's 14.8. He's averaging 7.3 rebounds a game. He's brought a front court presence to Virginia Tech. And this past game aside, and this past game is the one that gave me pause, he's been so consistent for them. He's made great defensive plays. He had that block late in the win over Duke. He leads the team with 18 blocked shots. He moves the ball well. To me, Keve Aluma has been, a revelation. I think he's first team all conference caliber player right now. And to me, I look at these teams and he's the MVP. If we're going with that mindset of Tech or UVA, to me, Keve Aluma has been the guy so far.
Mike, that's another great choice. And I'm sitting here looking at Ken Palm's all ACC team as of this moment. Jay Huff 1, Keve Aluma 4.
Hey, not bad.
There you go.
I guess we know what we're talking about.
Well, let's not get carried away.
Well, at least you do, because you had number 1. Well, our guest joining us now was a big football star at UVA. He's got his sights set on the NFL, but Charles Snowden knows his way around a basketball court too, and was actually a pretty highly regarded recruit in that sport. Charles, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So tell me, I know that basketball was kind of one of your first loves, and some colleges had interest in you. Have you kept playing the game? Do you get in pickup games, any of that?
Yeah, I definitely try to as much as I can. It's kind of hard during the season, and then with COVID, it was extremely hard. But so I haven't played in a while. But back under normal circumstances, I always try to get a game every now and then. And
have you kept tabs on the UVA team, and what's kind of your impression of what they've got going on this season?
Oh, yeah, I'm a big fan of this UVA team. I love UVA and I love basketball, so naturally I love UVA's basketball team. But I like them a lot because they kind of played basketball how I used to play. So they're a big defense-first team, and defense travels, whether you're hitting shots or not. Defense always travels, and they just have so many weapons now. Kihei stepping up, Sam Hauser, I don't know how to say his last name, Stensai, and then of course Jay Huff roaming the middle. I think they have weapons all over. And Trey Murphy, I really like this team a lot.
Defense first, Charles. That's music to Tony Bennett's ears, and or defense travels. Excuse me, music to Tony Bennett's ears and Broncos as well. If you would update us on your health and how your rehab is going from the ankle.
Yeah, it's going really well. I'm in Pensacola, Florida, at the Andrews Institute with Exos, rehabbing every day. And so every day kind of increases mobility, increases strength. And so, I'm in a walking boot now, but I can walk pretty fine without it. And so I've now started this week doing modified lower body lifts. And so it's healing really well.
I don't know how similar the injuries were, but have you used Bryce Hall, your former teammate, as a sounding board? And do you take encouragement from his really excellent rookie season in the league?
Yeah, definitely. The injuries were almost identical. The only difference was Bryce also dislocated his ankle, whereas mine was just a break and some torn ligaments. But definitely, knowing the type of guy Bryce is, I know how hard he worked to get back to where he is now. And so that kind of tells me what it'll take to get there. And then to see him have success so early on definitely inspires me and kind of tells me that, I'm capable of doing that as well.
Charles, we don't want to relive the bad stuff, but just real quickly take us through what was it like to suffer that injury in a year when you guys are working so hard just to get on the field? What was it like to go through that, and how do you think you kind of handled it emotionally?
It was definitely tough. It was crazy to end that way. Like the whole, like, in the back of my head, like, I've just been thinking, like, fourth year, like, it's not supposed to end like this. And then when I had the injury, I was like, wow, it's really not supposed to end like this. But it was definitely tough. Right after I had my surgery, I was just home for a while and just kind of living on my couch. My parents bringing me anything I needed, just hard to move around. And that was really tough. But once I was able to get down to Charlottesville and kind of put my coaching hat on and just be back around the guys, it really turned everything around for me. Just being with teammates, coaches, my roommates, everything, like, it made the world of a difference.
What was it like being sidelined for that Tech game?
Oh my God, it's hard to even talk about. But that wasn't easy at all. And to be out there not being able to help my guys, that hurts.
I remember watching you come out on senior day for the Boston College game on that scooter and thinking, kind of using your phrase, this is not how it's supposed to end for Charles Snowden. But still, was it pretty cool to be able to go through that and be on the sideline that day for, obviously in front of a limited crowd, but the final home game of the season, as it turns out, your career?
I was extremely appreciative to be there, to be able to, like, to the athletic trainers allowing me to still be around the guys. And I was so happy that we got the win, and to see guys like Matt Gammon, his last game at Scott Stadium, playing so well, to see Elliott Brown on his senior day playing so well, that just made me so excited.
Now, you're a guy who did not come to Virginia as the NFL prospect that you are right now. I mean, you had what? They were the only offer, is that correct?
Yeah, University of Virginia was my only football offer.
What does it mean to you, your growth, your personal progress, but the way the program kind of mirrored it? It's like you got here lightly regarded, the program probably lightly regarded at that point, and to see you and UVA kind of make the climb you have, what's that like to be a part of?
It's so exciting. It's cool. Like, we were Coach Mendenhall's first recruiting class. And so to see the growth that I went through, Coach Atawai used to always say to us, it's not a matter of if, just a matter of when. And so to really see that, like, begin to happen, I'm excited. And I truly believe, like, this is just the foundation. Like, this is just the beginning. The culture is now in place. And now every year, I don't think I was a bad player, but I was just, lowly 2-star recruit. They're not bringing in many of those guys anymore. Now they're getting more 3-4-star guys. And so now when you mix that talent with that culture, I'm really excited for the direction of this program.
David asked you about the emotion on senior day and being a part of that. I'm curious if you're willing to share. Did you know at that point, was your decision made that was going to be it for you, or was there still some question in your mind?
I'd pretty much known at that point. I'd honestly, I hadn't given it too much, serious thought. Nothing was set in stone, but I knew that was kind of the way I was leaning. And so I knew more likely that was going to be my last one at Scott.
Were you leaning that way, Charles, even before your injury?
Yeah, definitely. Kind of no matter how the rest of the season played out, it was most likely going to be my last season.
Yeah. And obviously, the injury against Abilene Christian, a downer of a conclusion, but the arc of your season where you admittedly started on the slow side, but then started to pick it up at Miami and then really rounded into form. Did you feel like when you got hurt that you were playing the best football of your Virginia career?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, I definitely got off to a slow start this season. And I think that the biggest turning point for me was, I remember being in the locker room at Miami. I feel like in the Wake Forest game, I started to play a little bit better. And then the next one was Miami. And I just remember being in the locker room and Coach Grizz just kind of said, look, Charles, I don't know what's going on with you, but you worked so hard this offseason to put on that size and that strength. And you've earned that. Go out there and use it. And so, yeah. When he said that to me, I was just like, that's a good point. So I just tried to start running through people, and it started to work. And so after that, I was always joking, there's a video, I got my swagger back. And so that's kind of what I was saying. That's kind of how I was feeling. And so, about around that Wake Forest Miami game, I feel like I kind of got my swagger back, and I was kind of playing the best football I'd played at UVA.
I'm curious. I'm glad David brought that up because Coach Mendenhall, not really criticism, but he said, Charles is playing fine, but he's not making a big impact. And then I asked UVA for permission to interview you, and a lot of guys in that spot, their season isn't going great yet. Their coach just said something kind of critical. A lot of guys don't take that interview. A lot of guys just tell me no. I'm curious why you agreed to talk to me. And then I will say, I thought your answers were so spot on that you agreed with Bronco and then you turned your season around. But why did you have the comfort level to kind of talk about that topic?
Because I think I know what I'm capable of. And so shying away from the facts, running from that's not going to make me a better football player. That would make me much of a football player if I can't honestly look at myself, look at the tape, and say, you're not playing to your capabilities. And so I thought, there was nothing to I was disappointed in myself, but I wasn't, at no point was I like sad, moping, like, oh, woe is me. I just said, hey, you just got to pick it up. And so, there was no like necessarily feeling as to, I don't want to talk about it because, these are the facts and you got to address the facts to fix it.
That brings us to another thing that I really want to get into, a topic here, which was dealing with the pandemic. And that day when we did that interview, you told me, you admitted that it was kind of hard to get yourself going without people in the stands, that you said you're a guy who feeds off the energy from the crowd. It's been hard to replace that. What was that like, that experience of, playing in mostly empty stadiums?
It was so strange. It was just the weirdest thing, but I kind of got used to it after a while, and we just kind of drew that energy from other places. Like, obviously, you can't replace 50,000 people with a sideline, but we can try our best, and we did. And we just kind of would try to have more fun on the field, just get yourself going, and just accept the fact. Kind of like I talked about earlier, just like accepting the facts, and so addressing that, and just trying to find that motivation from elsewhere.
Charles, how grueling, maybe more so mentally than physically, were the COVID protocols, and did fatigue from that contribute to the team decision to decline any postseason invitation?
Yeah, it definitely was more mentally than it was physically, but it was tough both ways. Just the uncertainty of not having a season, and then because there was no spring ball, we started football, like playing football, so much earlier than we normally would in terms of fall camp. So fall camp was extended. So, guys were playing football from July until late November, December. And so, that's just tough. It was just tough on guys. And then to not be able to see our families after games, stuff like that. It was 100% a grind. And, I wasn't playing in the game, so I didn't want to really necessarily sway guys one way or another, and I completely understand why everyone voted that way, because it was definitely a grind.
How many times would you estimate you were tested for COVID?
Oh my God, it's 3 times a week from August to December. Golly, I'm not that great at math, but it was a lot.
December, yeah, probably 60, 70 times.
Exactly. There was somebody on our team who was keeping track of every single test, but I don't remember who it was, but they know the exact number.
Was there a moment, Charles, for you, and obviously you guys handled it so well, and you got your season in, and I think that's remarkable in and of itself, but was there ever a moment for you where you thought to yourself, why are we doing this? This is crazy.
Nah, for me, I was excited to play. Like, I was like, I don't necessarily think I needed why are we, we're playing football. I don't know, that. I love playing football. I'm excited to play. But I'm at the same time, there are so if we were getting tested, and that's for 100 guys on the team, that's upwards, and then you have the support staff as well. That's upwards of over 1,000 tests. That there are, and we're all young, healthy men. You could make the argument. It is a very valid argument that those tests could be used within the Charlottesville community. There are people that don't have access to tests like that, and that they could be immunocompromised, or they could be a little bit older. And so from that aspect, I thought, this is definitely not the best use of resources in terms of public health. But at no point was I like, why are we playing football? We don't need to play this sport during the pandemic.
Bronco was pretty transparent during the season Charles, about how conflicted he was by the entire exercise of trying to play in a pandemic. And, his son's season was originally canceled out at Utah State, and then they reversed course and decided to play. And then you all were trying to play. Did he share some of his, inner struggles about all this with the team?
Oh yeah, definitely. He said to us, just very blatantly, like, I want to coach you guys. I don't want to play football, but if like at some point like a new rule is instituted that like you can't see people outside your bubble. So if he said like I can't see my family, then he said that he probably would opt out of the season. And so he was always very, as upfront he was with you guys, he was upfront with us and was just very honest about how he felt. And he told us that it's probably not the best situation to play, but if we want to play, he'll coach us.
What was your reaction? What's the team's reaction to a coach being that kind of open and honest?
That at least tells us that he has awareness of what's going on. And so he can acknowledge that this is not easy for anyone and that he, at least he knows. Now, would he go out there and coach us hard? And yeah, but we knew that he knew that these were not normal circumstances and that this was tough on everyone.
What was the hardest non-football part for you in terms of just your daily life or how you kind of got around, who you could see or couldn't see? What was the biggest impact for you away from the field?
For me, it'd probably just be just escaping football, escaping that football bubble. I just enjoyed going to class or this place on grounds called the Pav, and it has Chick-fil-A and people just hang out there all day. I would just hang out there and just, I see my teammates, but also just see friends and just seeing people, and I would not have to think about the sport of football. Whereas this year, you leave practice and then you just go home to your apartment and just kind of just sit there with your teammates who are often your roommates. And then your coach's notes, and you have Zoom calls about watching film for practice. And it was just, at some points, it was just very overwhelming with football. But I think guys began to get creative and find escapes, and that helped people get out that football bubble.
Now, with that as the backdrop and that going on in the country and everything, there was also all of this that you got very involved in terms of the movements for social justice and things with athlete empowerment. And tell me, what was it like to kind of find yourself not just kind of in it, but at times at the forefront? And what was it like to be a part of all of that?
It was definitely a eye-opening experience, I would say, and I'm still am just very excited to see players kind of take ownership of their lives, and now you kind of see players beginning to have more say, and I'm excited for that. And just the battle for social justice that's been going on since this country was founded, and so I'm just trying to do my part and trying to fight for what I believe to be right.
As our friend Gene Wong from the Washington Post wrote about this summer, social activism is not new to you. As a junior at St. Albans, after Colin Kaepernick had taken a knee for the national anthem, you did too. Describe, if you would, kind of your start into making social statements and why you did it.
I've always kind of just been a pretty outspoken person. My grandma always tells me that I was a fairly socially aware person, just always at a young age. And so I think that I just kind of know right from wrong. And if I see something's wrong, then I'm going to speak up about it because wrong is wrong. And so I took a knee for one game, but then I just kind of, as I reflected on that, it just seemed very me. And so after that, I just kind of sat down, had a conversation with my teammates, and we decided to all link arms. The whole team would link arms during the anthem, kind of stand together and stand against injustice and stuff like that. And so, towards the end of the season, we kind of did have guys who broke off and would just put their hand over their heart for the anthem, and that was their decision. But I definitely tried to make it more team group statement rather than just Charles Snowden standing alone and saying something.
Yeah. Now, college football players are in the locker room for the anthem. If they had been on the field this season, What do you think the Cavaliers might have done?
I don't know. I don't think I can say for certain what we would have done. I think I maybe have some ideas, but I think we definitely would have made a statement of some sort to kind of represent where we are and where we stand.
Now, I'm curious, we're recording this on January 19th, so that the day after we're celebrating Martin Luther King and his legacy. And this is a hard question, obviously, for a young guy or for anybody to answer. But Charles, does it feel like the movement that we're in now, that you're a part of now, that we're all seeing unfold, does it feel like it has the legs to finally maybe get us over the hump? Or does it feel like things you've read about in history that we've kind of started down this path before and never seemed to quite finish the job?
I think that it's institutional racism and systemic racism, like it's injustice, like it is so deeply rooted in America that it's going to take a lot more time to root out. Like it's so much deeper than just simply police brutality. It's like now when you look at COVID, now we're talking about rolling out the vaccine and vaccine distribution. Well, the government thinks that it's best you distribute it through CVS and Walgreens and stores like that. Well, those are companies. And so companies place those pharmacies in places where they think they can garner the most profit. So there aren't many CVSs in low-income neighborhoods, and those low-income neighborhoods are mostly Black and brown neighborhoods. And so because of that, Black and brown people are not as accessible to the vaccine. And you look at jobs that didn't have the luxury of being able to have meetings over Zoom. You have jobs where you have to go in and work your manual labor. Well, those jobs, those blue collar jobs are predominantly Black and brown people. So they've been more exposed to the virus. And so it's so much more than like just a couple issues. We think it is so deeply rooted and so intertwined that it's going to take, I don't know if I'll see the equality in my lifetime, but I know that I'm going to keep fighting for that, because it's going to take a lot more work.
Now, you've got all of these issues on your mind, all of these things to think about, the pandemic, and you're working for an NFL future. So tell us a little bit about what that experience is like and kind of what's your outlook? What do you expect to happen with you here as we go into this draft process?
I don't know. I don't think like you said earlier, I didn't really plan on being in this position. And so now that I am, I don't think I necessarily have any expectations, or I just know what I am capable of. And I'm going to maximize every day and give it everything I have, because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I mean, the NFL, like that's something every kid dreams about. Even though I grew up a basketball player, I mean, I watched NFL football every Sunday with my dad. And so now to be in this position, I'm going to make the most of it.
In that regard, Charles, are you looking forward to continuing your activism with, hopefully, in the NFL, an even larger platform than you had at UVA? And related to that, have you watched as former UVA athletes such as Chris Long and Malcolm Brogdon have done exactly that?
Of course, definitely. There's increased platform, increased resources at the next level as well. And so definitely looking to take advantage of those, because, the bigger the platform, the more people you can help. And on the flip side of that, the better player you are, the more success you have, it's just naturally a bigger platform. And so making sure that I understand that football is what I do and making sure I'm taking care of that. But, the better that I am, the more people I can kind of help. And so I'll definitely be looking to Chris Long and Malcolm Brogdon. They kind of set the blueprint out. All I have to do is follow it.
Is there a moment that you thought that an NFL dream was realistic? I mean, you mentioned you were a basketball guy, and then you came to UVA and turned into a star. But like we talked about, not that heralded coming in. Was there a moment that, for you in your mind, you thought, "Hey, the NFL dream is more of a realistic goal for me"?
I don't think it really hit me until this summer, or like kind of this off season, when I would kind of see stuff online like, oh yeah, Charles upcoming prospects this year to keep an eye on. And I don't really read too much into that stuff on the internet, because at the end of the day, it's just someone sharing their opinion, which it's flattering, but their opinion doesn't necessarily hold any weight at the next level. But once I started to see it consistently, I was like, oh wow, maybe this is an option.
Charles, if I could tandem of a football and social activism question here as we wrap up. You grew up in the DMV there in suburban Washington. What was your reaction when Washington's NFL franchise dropped the nickname and went to a more generic and vowed to change it?
I was excited. I grew up a lifelong Washington football fan. One of my best friends growing up, this is not an exaggeration, every night before bed, when I would sleep over, his dad would come in and sing Hail to the Redskins every night before bed.
Wow.
So definitely huge Washington football fans. And I think that it was the right thing to do to change the name. And now that, changed the name, got some good juju going, curses lifted, and made the playoffs. So, I think there's a direct correlation. That's all I'm saying.
Taylor Heineke, how about that effort there?
Heineke.
Well, we've asked you some pretty heavy stuff. I do want to end on a lighter note. I'm curious, as you look back on your UVA career, was there a moment or two, not the most important or the most significant, but maybe the most fun, or the thing you look back on, the moment you look back on, and maybe it makes you smile automatically? What stands out in that regard?
It's got to be, I don't know if I can look back at like one moment, but I can say that finishing every off season, our workouts, Pride, we call them Pride Friday, for every Friday, they were the hardest workout of the week. And finishing a Pride Friday, in the last 15 minutes of it, knowing it's wrapping up soon, giving everything you got, I would kind of turn to some of my teammates hey, 15 more minutes till the weekend, man. Come on, let's get through it. Then we get to the weekend. And then sitting in the locker room, sometimes we would sit in that locker room. Workouts would end at 8. I'm talking, we would not, we would lay down in the locker room till 8:40. We wouldn't even start trying to shower and move to 8:40 just because we were just dead. And those moments in the locker room were just so fun, knowing that you'd go through that with your teammates that morning and then go home, take a nap, and then go hang out with your teammates later, celebrate the hard work you just did. Those moments right there, that's what I look back on and smile, and that's what I'll miss the most.
Well, that's great. And UVA fans, you gave them a lot of memories to look back on and smile. It's been a ton of fun to watch you play here at UVA, and it's been a lot of fun to get to know you off the field as well.
No, thank you. The pleasure has been all mine. And I can't thank you guys. I can't thank UVA. The fans, I'm just so grateful. I didn't expect any of this when I got here, but that just makes me even more grateful.
Well, best of luck to Charles Snowden. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
You can subscribe to Teel and Barber on Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And please consider supporting local journalism with an online subscription to the TD. You can find special promotional offers available at richmond.com. A very special thanks to Charles Snowden for joining us on today's show. The show was produced by Dean Hoffmeyer. Teel and Barber is a podcast of the Richmond Times-Dispatch and richmond.com. For David Teel, I'm Mike Barber. Thanks for listening. Be healthy and safe, and please join David and me again next week.